The purpose of this video is to walk you guys through how to properly execute an RDL, and then at the end I'm going to be providing a small but rather effective execution cue that you might not have ever came across before. So when we're looking at an RDL, the muscles that we are targeting are primarily the hamstrings and the glutes, and then specifically the gluteus maximus, which is the biggest one responsible for giving you that dump truck which everyone is trying to grow. And then other muscles that are involved are the lower back muscles, as they definitely play a role, but later on in this video I'm going to provide some additional information on how much they're going to contribute to just force production depending on how the movement is being executed. Both the glutes and the hamstrings, they attach to the hips or the pelvis, and that's primarily where this movement is occurring during this exercise. Another term for this movement that you'll commonly hear is a hip hinge, and hip hinge, the name itself is about as self-explanatory as you can get. So when we're looking at this exercise, let me bring it to the top. So the hinging is occurring. So we have our upper body, our torso, and then our leg. These 2 points are going to hinge around our hip, hence hip hinge. And then the 2 movements that we're concerned about, and you'll hear me refer to these terms, is hip flexion. And hip flexion is when these 2 points, our upper body and our lower body, they're going to come closer together. So that is known as hip flexion. So right here, this angle is known as hip flexion. And then the other term I'm going to use is hip extension, which is how you'll bring your hips forward, and that will bring us to the starting position for this exercise. So when we're looking in how we want to execute this thing, the first cue is you want to keep your head in a neutral position with your chin tucked. And FYI, this is probably going to give you an ugly double chin, but if it's going to help you grow a fat ass, I don't think people are going to care that you have a double chin. So let's see at the bottom. So to start the exercise, you're going to be looking straight out in front of you, but then as you perform the hinge and you're at this bottom position, you will be looking down in front of you. Another execution cue to think of is we want to have your arms hang straight down the entire time. You can think of them as being ropes, and they're just hanging down straight out in front of you, and they're going to be perpendicular with the ground throughout the entire exercise. Along with your arms acting as ropes, the other thing that you want to make sure is that as you're performing the eccentric, you do not want your hands to travel further away from your legs. You want to keep them relatively close to your shins as you perform the eccentric. And then once you get to the bottom position, you can stop the eccentric once your butt quits traveling backwards. So at this position right there, back a little bit. So this line right here, I'm going to do it in red. This is as far back as my butt will travel. I could continue lowering the weight, but as I lower the weight, if my butt doesn't travel any further back, but let's say my torso continues to go down, so say maybe my torso is more here and my head is down here. When we're in this position, it's not inherently bad, but if our butt is not traveling any further backwards, we aren't getting any more extra work out of the glutes or the hamstrings, and now the load is being shifted onto our lower back muscles. And the series of videos on my channel is geared towards training specific muscles, and if we're going to train muscles as specifically as we can, we want to stay in the range of motion where they are primarily responsible for being the main bearers of the load. So in this case, we want to make sure that you stop the eccentric once your butt quits traveling backwards, and you might need someone to watch this for you or set up a video and record yourself to see where this position is occurring. And then once you're deciding to initiate your concentric and bring the weight back up, this is a pivotal point in this rep. As many of you, this is where it will make or break you. So there are 2 different cues you can think about when trying to initiate bringing the weight back up. What I don't want you to think about is just like thinking, I'm bringing my head up, I'm just trying to get to that starting position, just standing straight up. What you're going to do instead is either one, you can think about pulling your hips forward, or the second cue you can think about is you can't see my heels, but you can think about pulling your heels back in the opposite direction. So you can think about either of those two. And by default, once you pull your hips forward, that will return you to your starting position. So I'm going to put up 2 separate videos, and I want you to watch them while I go through this next little part and see if you can notice any differences in the execution between the two. This small cue that I mentioned earlier will help us either bias the stimulus more towards our glutes or more towards our hamstrings. So if a bigger ass is on your agenda, we can make that happen. But also if you have some leggy hamstrings, we can make that happen as well. So this small cue that I mentioned earlier that will drastically change whether the glutes or the hamstrings are receiving the greatest stimulus is just by simply looking at the knee. So when the glute biased execution for this exercise, there is more knee bend than the hamstring biased version. We don't want you to lock out your knee and fully extend your leg or bend your knees super far so you're essentially performing a deadlift, but small changes in how much knee bend you have will drastically change which muscle group is receiving more of the stimulus. So the knee position is going to dictate which muscle is more lengthened, and in an exercise like the RDL, which has the greatest resistance in the lengthened position, the muscle that is the most lengthened will get the most stimulus. So in the case of the bent knee, when we bend our knee, since the hamstring attaches down to the back of our lower leg, if the knee bends, this shortens the hamstring. So that will, one, disadvantage the hamstrings so they won't be working as hard. And then when I take me out of the picture and we just look at the angles here, once we bend the knee, we're able to get more into hip flexion, which will help us bias the glutes even more. And then when we straighten the knee, this lengthens the hamstring, and that gives us the opportunity to make the hamstring the primary mover. So whatever knee position you choose, the execution cues that I listed previously, like your chin tucked, your arms hanging straight down, keeping your hands close to your legs, stopping the eccentric once your butt quits traveling backwards, all of those cues stay the exact same, but you can dictate whether you want more hamstring or glutes based on what you're doing with your knee. This exercise is included within my current program, within my progression programming that I run online for anybody. And progression programming is where I make a workout program, I use Google Sheets, and I share it with anybody that has the link. And then I make a corresponding YouTube video where I will just walk you through the program goals, how we're going to perform the exercises, the reasons I selected the exercises, and then just any other information that will help you get the most bang for your buck when doing this program. And then along with this program, I'll have a weekly newsletter that you can subscribe to where it'll give you any more relevant information as the weeks progress. And then I go through specific exercises for each week. So this week's topic was RDL, and then I'm making a video for it as well. And then I also have any other random topics that you guys suggest me to make videos about. You can head to my website at evolutionaryaesthetics.com, and on the website you can download my free Potent Priorities ebook, and it gives you 4 foundational areas to put the majority of your efforts into. So whether that's sleeping, nutrition, training, and then moving outside of the gym. It gives you the most basic things first, and then lets you progress into more specifics if that's something you desire. Also within the book, I've got sample meals from snacks to extra large meals of 1,000 calories. Tips and tricks to improve your digestion, dealing with bulking or cutting. What other stuff is in there? Supplements to look for in your pre-workouts. It's pretty much my overall encompassing thing to guide you towards the promised lands of gains. If you found this video useful for helping you execute an RDL, and then as well as if you like the small cue of switching up your knee position, whether you want more glutes or hamstrings involved in this movement, subscribe, share this with somebody that you think also will appreciate this, and we'll see each other in the next video.